The Universal Nightmare Index lists human vengeance stories as the most terrifying tales. Part 1. The Great Hall of the Galactic Archive stretched farther than most eyes could see. Thousands of species had contributed to its endless shelves over millions of years. Every culture's fears, every civilization's nightmares, all carefully catalogued and preserved. Archivist floated through the chamber, her crystalline body catching the soft light that filtered through the dome above. She carried a data tablet that glowed with an unusual color, red. In all her 300 years of service, she had only seen red alerts twice before. Both times had changed how the galaxy understood fear itself. The Galactic Council members filed into the presentation chamber. They came in all shapes and sizes. The representative crawled in on 6 legs, his exoskeleton clicking against the polished floor. Ambassador of the Vex floated beside him, a being of pure energy contained in a simple spherical field. Dozens more followed, each species sending their best to hear's annual report on the Universal Nightmare Index. Council members, began, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The index has been updated. For the first time in 12,000 cycles, we have a new category leader. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The index rarely changed. Fear was surprisingly consistent across species. The things that terrified civilizations remained stable for. Category 7, Vengeance Narratives, continued. They have held this position since the index was created. Their stories of multi-generational hunts of prey tracked across entire star systems have been unmatched in their ability to create dread. The representative straightened with pride, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. However, said softly, they have been displaced. Silence fell across the chamber. By whom? Demanded General of the HAL Empire. He was a massive being, scales gleaming like polished metal, arms thick with muscle earned through conquest. The L. Their revenge rituals are legendary. No, replied, by the humans. Laughter erupted. General slammed a fist on his console, shaking with amusement. The humans, those tiny pink creatures from that water world, they've barely been in space for 70 years. They have no claws, no armor, no venom. They die if you breathe on them wrong. Other council members joined in the laughter. Even Ambassador on pulsed with what could only be interpreted as amusement. Waited for the noise to fade. I will play a sample, she said quietly. The lights dimmed. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber, had translated a human story, one they called The Count of Monte. She had compressed it, pulling out the essential elements so the council could experience it properly. The council members watched as the story unfolded. They saw Edmund, a young human full of joy and love, betrayed by those he trusted. They watched him thrown into a prison, buried alive in stone for 14 years. They felt his despair, his rage, his eventual numbness. Then came the escape, the slow, careful accumulation of wealth and knowledge, the creation of new identities, the patient observation of his enemies, now grown comfortable and powerful, believing themselves safe. And finally, the revenge itself, not quick, not merciful, dismantled each betrayer's life piece by piece, taking away everything they loved before revealing himself. The psychological torture lasted years. By the time he finished, his enemies begged for death. When the display ended, the chamber remained silent. The temperature seemed to have dropped. This is one story, said into the quiet. Humans have thousands like it. Their culture is saturated with vengeance narratives. They teach them to their children. They celebrate them in their art. They have a saying, revenge is a dish best served cold. For humans, cold can mean years, decades, sometimes generations. But it's fiction, Ambassador On said, though their voice lacked its earlier amusement. Stories don't reflect reality. Don't they? Sform shimmered. Every species' nightmare stories reflect their deepest cultural values and capabilities. They tell hunting stories because they are persistence predators. They tell stories of betrayal because their society runs on strict honor codes. Humans tell stories of elaborate, patient revenge because, she paused, because they can actually do it. Impossible, General growled, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Humans are emotional creatures. They cry at sad things. They laugh at stupid jokes. They can't possibly maintain focus for years while pretending everything is normal. That's what makes them terrifying, replied. They can separate their emotions from their actions. A human can smile at you, share a meal with you, even seem to befriend you, all while planning your destruction. Their brains have a remarkable capacity for what they call compartmentalization. They can hate you absolutely while appearing completely peaceful. She pulled up more data. I've analyzed 70,000 human vengeance stories from their history. The patterns are consistent. Humans who seek revenge become patient. They gather resources. They study their targets. They wait for the perfect moment. And they're creative in ways that should be impossible. The representative spoke for the first time, his voice rattling with genuine concern. The story you showed us, the human waited 14 years. That was a shorter example, said. I have stories where humans waited 30 years, 50 years. In one case, a human spent their entire life preparing revenge that their children would execute after their death. Barbaric, someone whispered. Perhaps, agreed, but effective, and most importantly, real. These aren't just stories. These are things humans have actually done to each other. The stories are warnings from one human to another about what their species is capable of. General stood, his full height dominating the chamber. This is all very interesting, archivist, but ultimately meaningless. Humans are weak. We've seen this ourselves. 3 years ago, my empire claimed one of their colony worlds. They had no military presence worth mentioning. We processed them for labor in our mining operations. They filed complaints through proper diplomatic channels, which we ignored. They did nothing. Nothing visible, corrected. Nothing at all, snapped. They accepted their defeat like any weak species does. They moved on. This council notes their behavior and sees their learning to accept their place in the galactic order. These stories you're frightened of are just stories. Crystalline form seemed to dim. General, I've spent 3 centuries studying fear across 10,000 species. I'm telling you that human vengeance narratives have displaced the hunting sagas as the most terrifying stories in the known universe. This happened through rigorous testing and analysis. The response patterns don't lie. Then your testing is flawed, said dismissively. Humans are nothing to fear. If anything, they should fear us. The council meeting dissolved into debate. Some members sided with, arguing for caution. Others agreed with, pointing to humanity's apparent weakness and their peaceful response to HAL aggression. Eventually, they voted. The index update would be noted in the records, but no action would be taken. Humans were not considered a threat. As the council members filed out, noticed a small figure standing in the observation gallery above. A human woman in a simple diplomatic aide's uniform. She'd been there the entire time, listening quietly. Floated up to the gallery. The human turned to face her. She was unremarkable by most standards. Average height, dark hair pulled back neatly, plain features. The kind of being you could pass 1,000 times and never notice. You heard everything? Asked. Yes, the human said. Her voice was calm, pleasant even. Thank you for trying to warn them. You're Sarah, said, accessing her memory. Junior diplomatic aide assigned to the human embassy. You're from the colony world the HAL enslaved. I am. Sarah's expression didn't change. I was off-world when they came. My family wasn't. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sarah smiled, but sensors detected something wrong with it. The smile was perfect, technically correct, but it was like looking at a mask. General is right about one thing. We did file complaints through proper channels. We did accept the diplomatic response. We moved on. But prompted. But nothing, Sarah said pleasantly. We're busy people, lots of work to do, trade agreements to negotiate, colony expansions to plan, normal civilization activities. She turned to leave, then paused. Though I did start keeping a list, just names really. All the HAL officials involved in the enslavement operation, where they're stationed now. Their routines, their families, normal record keeping. She walked away, her footsteps quiet on the polished floor. Watched her go, her sensors unable to detect any deception. The human seemed completely sincere, utterly harmless. That was what terrified most of all. She thought of Edmund, smiling at his enemies while arranging their destruction. She thought of all those human stories, where revenge came not with anger but with cold precision. She returned to her archives and created a new file, marking it for personal observation. In the file she placed one entry: Sarah, former colony resident, current diplomatic aide, family status, enslaved by HAL Empire 3 years ago. Beneath that, she added a note from human literature: beware the fury of a patient man. Then she corrected it: beware the fury of a patient human. Somewhere in the galaxy, General returned to his flagship, satisfied with another successful council meeting. His empire was strong. His enemies were weak. Life was good. He had no idea that he was already dead. He just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Part 2. 3 years passed quickly for most of the galaxy. For the HAL Empire, those years brought continued expansion and profit. For the humans, they brought steady diplomatic progress and careful economic growth. For Sarah, they brought purpose. She sat in a small on Nexus station, a neutral trading hub where 1,000 species mingled daily. Her companion was a merchant named Hin, whose 4 arms gestured enthusiastically as he discussed shipping routes and profit margins. To anyone watching, they were simply 2 traders sharing a meal and discussing business. "The new human colonies are excellent customers," Hin said, his translator rendering his chittering into standard galactic common. "Always pay on time, never haggle unfairly. Much better than HAL contracts." "Oh," Sarah sipped her tea, her expression mildly interested. "The HAL are difficult clients." "Difficult, ha!" Hin's mandibles clicked with amusement. "They demand impossible deadlines, threaten violence when shipments are late. Just last month, Supply Officer L threatened to space my entire crew because a shipment arrived 3 days behind schedule. 3 days. Due to a solar storm we couldn't control." "L," Sarah repeated, as if simply making conversation. "Is he stationed at the mining colonies?" "Yes, the one at. He oversees supply distribution for the labor operations there." Sarah made a small sound of acknowledgement and changed the subject to grain shipments. They finished their meal pleasantly. She paid for both of them, as was human custom, and they parted as friendly business associates. That night Sarah updated her tablet. Next to the name L she placed a small checkmark. His location confirmed. His routine established. His vulnerabilities mapped. 2 weeks later, L disappeared. His ship was found drifting between star systems, all systems functioning normally, cargo intact. The crew quarters were empty except for one oddity. The ship's entertainment system was playing a human lullaby on continuous loop, a song called "Hush Little Baby." The HAL investigators found it strange but not particularly concerning. L had likely been murdered by smugglers or pirates. These things happened in space. They filed a report and moved on. 3 months after that, another HAL official vanished. Colonel, who had overseen the initial invasion of the human colony, failed to report for duty. His residence was empty. His personal transport was still in its dock. There was no sign of struggle, no evidence of violence. He had simply ceased to exist. This time, investigators found something: a single item left on his desk. A human photograph showing happy families at a beach. Nothing threatening, no message, just an image of what had helped destroy. The pattern continued slowly, spread across months and light years. A supply coordinator disappeared from a station in the Outer Rim. A diplomatic vanished during shore leave on a pleasure world. A logistics officer never returned from what should have been a simple inspection tour. Each disappearance was clean. No witnesses, no evidence, no bodies, and with each one the investigators found small human cultural items left behind. A child's toy, a family photo, a page from a human book of poetry, nothing that made sense as a threat, yet somehow deeply unsettling. The HAL Empire had millions of officials across hundreds of worlds. 17 missing officers over 3 years didn't seem significant to the bureaucracy. Reports were filed. Investigations were opened and quietly closed when they yielded nothing. Life continued. But General noticed. He had survived his rise to power by noticing patterns others missed. He pulled the reports one evening in his private quarters and spread them across his desk. 17 names, 17 disappearances. He cross-referenced them with his personnel database. The cold feeling started in his spine and spread outward. Every single missing officer had been directly involved in the human colony enslavement. Everyone had been present during the initial invasion or the subsequent labor processing. Some had been ship captains who transported human prisoners. Others had been administrators who separated families. One had been the communications officer who ignored human distress calls. Sat back in his chair, his clawed fingers drumming on the desk. It couldn't be. Humans were weak. They had done nothing. Their government had filed protests and then moved on. They were busy with trade and colonization, acting like every other peaceful species. But 17 was too many to be coincidence. He accessed the Galactic Network and began researching. He dismissed the archivist's presentation 3 years ago, but now he wanted to see these human vengeance stories himself. He started with the one had shown the council. Reading The Count of Monte took him 2 days. He barely slept. The story gripped him with cold fingers. This creature, planning for years, appearing civilized and friendly while systematically destroying his enemies. The patience, the precision, the absolute commitment to revenge regardless of cost. He read more. Stories called Gladiator and Kill Bill and John Wick, and each one showed humans pursuing revenge with single-minded focus. Some waited years, some waited decades, all of them succeeded. These weren't stories of hot-blooded rage. They were instruction manuals for cold-blooded vengeance. Accessed humanity's historical records, the ones they freely shared on the network. He found real cases. A human woman who spent 20 years gathering evidence to prove her father was murdered, eventually bringing down an entire corporate conspiracy. A human man who tracked his sister's killer across 3 continents over 15 years. Another who learned 8 languages and spent a decade infiltrating a criminal organization to avenge his family. The stories were real. The patience was real. The capacity for long-term planning while appearing completely normal was real. Called his intelligence chief. I want surveillance on all human diplomatic personnel. Quietly, I want to know what they're doing. Sir, all of them. All of them. Especially anyone with connections to the colony world we took 3 years ago. The intelligence chief saluted and disappeared. Reports began flowing in within hours. Most human diplomats were exactly what they appeared to be, boring bureaucrats attending meetings and filing paperwork. But one name appeared repeatedly in unexpected places. Sarah, junior diplomatic aide. She traveled extensively over the past 3 years. Her official duties required minimal travel, yet she'd visited 17 different star systems. The exact 17 systems where HAL officers had disappeared. Stared at her file. The image showed an unremarkable human woman with a pleasant smile. Her record was spotless. Excellent job performance. Friendly demeanor. No disciplinary issues. She attended trade conferences, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic functions. She was, by all accounts, completely harmless. He read deeper. Her family had been on the colony world. Her parents, 2 siblings, and 3 nieces, all processed into the HAL labor system. Current status: scattered across various mining operations, separated as per standard protocol. Closed the file and sat in silence for a long time. Then he did something he rarely did. He contacted Archivist directly. She appeared as a hologram in his office, her crystalline form glowing softly. "General, this is unexpected." "You were right," said simply. "3 years ago at the council meeting, you were right about the humans." "I take no pleasure in that." His voice held genuine sadness. "What's happened?" Explained everything. The disappearances, the pattern, Sarah's travels, listened without interruption. "How do I stop it?" asked when he finished. "Stop what?" replied. "According to official records, Sarah is a diplomatic aide attending legitimate functions. She hasn't been accused of any crime. There's no evidence connecting her to the disappearances. Human authorities would rightfully dismiss any accusations as paranoid speculation." "But you believe she's responsible?" "I believe," said carefully, "that humans are very good at maintaining plausible deniability. I believe they're very good at patience. And I believe that when you harm a human's family, you create something far more dangerous than any soldier. So I do nothing. I just wait for more of my people to vanish." "You could try apologizing," suggested. "You could return the enslaved humans to their families. You could offer reparations. You could put the responsible officers on trial." Scales bristled. "The HAL Empire doesn't apologize. We don't submit to threats." "Then you don't understand the nature of your situation," said quietly. "This isn't a threat. Threats can be negotiated. This is simply consequences arriving late. The humans aren't threatening you. They're just—" she paused. "They're just keeping their promises." "What promises? They never threatened us." "Exactly. They never had to. Their vengeance stories are promises they make to themselves about what they'll do if you harm what they love. And General, you harmed what Sarah loved." The hologram flickered and faded. Was alone in his office again, surrounded by reports of missing officers and images of a smiling human woman who appeared at trade conferences while his people vanished. He thought about calling Sarah directly, confronting her, demanding she stop. But he already knew what would happen. She would smile pleasantly and deny everything. She would point to her travel logs showing legitimate business purposes. She would express concern about the missing HAL officers and offer sympathy. And then another one would disappear. That night received a package at his personal residence. His security scanned it thoroughly and found nothing dangerous. Just a simple envelope with a single photograph inside. The photograph showed his family estate on the HAL. It was taken from inside his private study, the room where he kept his most precious possessions and his most sensitive documents. The room that required his biometric signature to enter. The room that was supposedly impenetrable. There was no note, no threat, no message at all. None was needed. Understood with perfect clarity that if someone could stand in his private study and take a photograph, they could do absolutely anything else they wanted. To him, to his family, to everyone he loved. He finally understood what had tried to tell the council 3 years ago. Humans didn't need to threaten you with their weapons. They didn't need to defeat you in battle. They just needed you to understand that there was nowhere you could hide, nowhere you were safe, and that they had all the time in the world. General, who had conquered 17 worlds and enslaved dozens of species, sat in his quarters and experienced true fear for the first time in his life. And somewhere, light years away, Sarah was having tea with a merchant, discussing shipping routes and profit margins, smiling pleasantly while her list grew shorter one name at a time. Part 3. The emergency Galactic Council session convened 3 months after General received his photograph. The HAL Empire had requested the meeting, which itself was unprecedented. The HAL didn't ask for help. They didn't show weakness. They conquered or they ignored, nothing in between. Yet here was General, looking diminished somehow despite his massive frame. His scales had lost their luster. His eyes constantly scanned the chamber as if expecting threats from every shadow. "The HAL Empire faces a unique security crisis," he began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Over the past 3 years, 43 of our officers have disappeared without trace. We have reason to believe humanity is responsible." The chamber erupted in noise. The human ambassador, a calm man named, raised his hand for attention. "General, the United Human Government categorically denies any involvement in these disappearances. We've committed no acts of war or aggression against the HAL Empire. Our diplomatic relations, while strained, remain officially cordial." "Officially," growled, "but unofficially you're hunting us." "Hunting? General, humanity has no military forces deployed in HAL space. We have no covert operations authorized against your people. If some of your officers have gone missing, perhaps you should examine your own internal security." It was a perfect diplomatic answer. Technically true, completely unhelpful and maddeningly calm. "I want Sarah arrested," demanded. "She's been present in every system where disappearances occurred." Ambassador's expression showed polite confusion. "Sarah, the trade liaison. General, Ms. attends approximately 200 functions per year across dozens of systems. She's one of our most active diplomats. The fact that she was present in the same systems as your missing officers is hardly evidence of wrongdoing. That's simple statistics." "She's a killer." "She's a bureaucrat who files expense reports and attends boring meetings," replied smoothly. "Do you have any actual evidence? Video footage of her committing crimes, witness testimony, physical evidence, anything beyond geographical correlation?" "Had nothing. Every investigation had turned up nothing. Security footage showed Sarah attending trade conferences and cultural events, always in public, always accounted for. She was never near the disappearances when they occurred, yet the pattern was undeniable." Floated forward from her observer's position. "Council members, with permission, I'd like to present relevant research." The council granted permission. Holographic displays filled the chamber, showing humanity's vengeance narratives alongside the pattern of HAL disappearances. 3 years ago, I warned this council about humanity's cultural capacity for patient revenge. I was dismissed. Since then, we've seen a textbook execution of the patterns I identified. Observe. In human vengeance stories, the protagonist always begins with information gathering. They map their targets, learn their routines, identify their vulnerabilities. This phase typically lasts years. She displayed Sarah's travel records, showing her systematic visits to different star systems over 3 years. Information gathering phase complete. Next, human vengeance stories show the protagonist beginning to act while maintaining perfect deniability. They're always somewhere else when the actual revenge occurs. They have alibis, witnesses, proof of innocence. More data appeared, showing Sarah's attendance records at various functions. Always documented, always public, always with dozens of witnesses placing her far from where HAL officers vanished. "But General," Ambassador interrupted, "this proves Ms. is innocent. She couldn't have been involved if she was demonstrably somewhere else." "That's the point," said softly. "Human vengeance isn't about getting your hands dirty personally. It's about orchestration. It's about being patient enough and smart enough to arrange events so that revenge happens while you're visibly elsewhere. Humans excel at this. They call it delegation." She pulled up more human stories, characters who arranged accidents, who manipulated others into doing their work, who created elaborate chains of events that led to their enemy's downfall while they themselves remained spotless. "The most terrifying aspect of human vengeance," continued, "is that you can't negotiate with it. Threats don't work because the humans don't care about consequences to themselves. Punishment doesn't work because you can't prove anything. Military force doesn't work because there's no army to fight. You're battling something far more dangerous than weapons. You're battling human determination fueled by love for family. The representative spoke up, his mandibles clicking nervously. Archivist, are you saying humanity has defeated the HAL Empire without ever officially attacking them? I'm saying, replied, that the HAL Empire defeated itself when it harmed human families. Humanity is simply responding according to their cultural programming. From their perspective, they're not being aggressive. They're being just. General slumped in his seat. Then how do I make it stop? You already know, said gently. The human vengeance stories always have an exit clause. The revenge ends when justice is served. Return what you took, punish those responsible, make things right. The HAL Empire doesn't surrender. This isn't surrender, Ambassador said quietly. This is called doing the right thing. General, you enslaved an entire colony of innocent people. You separated families. Children were taken from their parents, parents from their children. For 3 years, thousands of humans have suffered in your labor camps for no reason except that we were weak and you were strong. It's what empires do, muttered. Perhaps, acknowledged. But actions have consequences. You took something precious from Sarah and thousands of others like her. They want it back. It's really very simple. And if I return the prisoners, release them all, what guarantee do I have that the disappearances will stop? Spread his hands. I can't speak for individual citizens, but I can tell you that humans believe in justice, not mindless revenge. Give them justice and most will be satisfied. Most. We're not perfect, admitted. Some might want more, but General, right now you have 43 missing officers and a population that's terrified. Your intelligence networks are paranoid. Your officials are looking over their shoulders constantly. Your empire is weakening from internal fear. How long before other species notice? How long before someone else decides a weakened HAL empire is easy prey? It was a masterful argument because it was true. Could see it happening already. His officers were requesting transfers away from positions related to human affairs. His intelligence resources were stretched thin investigating shadows. His command structure was developing cracks. All because of one human woman with a list and the patience to work through it. I need to speak with Sarah, said finally, directly. That can be arranged, replied. The meeting took place on neutral ground. Archives on the archive station. General arrived with a full security detail. Sarah arrived alone, carrying a simple briefcase. They met in a small conference room. Observed from a distance, her sensors recording everything. Ms. began, his voice tight with controlled rage. I know what you've been doing. I'm not sure what you mean, General. Sarah's voice was pleasant, her expression mild. I've been attending trade conferences and promoting human commercial interests. My records are all publicly available. 43 of my people are missing. That's terrible. I hope your investigators find them. She said it with what seemed like genuine sympathy. Wanted to roar, to threaten, to make her admit it, but he'd learned his lesson about human patience. What do you want? Want, General, I don't want anything from you. Don't play games with me. Sarah's pleasant expression finally cracked, not into anger but into something colder. Fine, you want honesty. My mother was 53 years old when your soldiers took her. She had arthritis. She loved gardening. Your people put her in a mine, General. My father was a teacher. My sister had 2 children. My brother was studying to be a doctor. Your empire scattered them across half the galaxy and worked them like animals. That was war. That was cruelty, Sarah interrupted quietly. We had no military. We posed no threat. You enslaved us because you could, because we were weak. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a data pad. I've spent 3 years learning about your people. Do you know what I found? You have families too. Children who love their parents. Parents who love their children. You're not monsters. You're just people who chose to do monstrous things. So you became a monster yourself. Did I? Sarah met his eyes calmly. I haven't broken any laws. I've attended meetings, filed paperwork, eaten a lot of boring meals with boring people. If some of your officers have vanished, well, space is dangerous. Accidents happen. You know exactly what happened to them. Do I? Prove it, General. Show me evidence, because I'm just a diplomat who misses her family. Her voice finally showed emotion, a hairline crack in her composure. I'm someone who wants her mother back, who wants to see her nieces grow up, who wants her father to have his garden again. Is that so unreasonable? Sat back. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything going forward. If I release all the human prisoners, he said slowly, if I return every family to their homes, if I put the officers responsible for the enslavement on trial, would that be justice? It would be a start. Not enough. Justice requires accountability, General. Your people need to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't harm innocents without paying a price. So yes, release them. Reunite the families. Put the guilty on trial. Then we can discuss whether justice has been served. And the disappearances. I imagine, Sarah said carefully, that if justice is served, if families are reunited, if accountability is established, then whoever has been making HAL officers disappear might decide their work is finished. But I wouldn't know anything about that. They stared at each other across the table, finally nodded. It will be done. Sarah stood and extended her hand, looked at it for a long moment before taking it. Her grip was firm but not aggressive, just a human handshake sealing an agreement. As she turned to leave, spoke again. Ms., those 43 officers, are they dead? Sarah paused at the door. I wouldn't know, General. I'm just a trade liaison. She left without looking back. 6 weeks later, every human prisoner was released from HAL custody. They were provided with medical care, compensation, and transport back to human space. The officers directly responsible for the enslavement faced HAL military tribunals. Many were imprisoned. Some were executed under HAL law. General personally oversaw the return of Sarah's family. They were malnourished and bore the scars of hard labor, but they were alive. Sarah met them at the spaceport on New Harmony Colony, watched the reunion from a distance, her sensors recording the purely human moment of a family embracing after 3 years of forced separation. Sarah's mother cried. Her father held her tight. Her nieces clung to her legs. There was no dramatic speech, no moment of triumphant revenge, just a family together again, grateful to be alive. That night updated the Universal Nightmare Index. She added extensive notes to the Human Vengeance entry. Recommendation to all species, she wrote. Do not create human enemies. Humans possess 3 traits that, in combination, make them uniquely dangerous when provoked. First, patience that allows them to plan over years or decades despite their brief. Second, creativity and execution that makes their revenge unpredictable and unavoidable. Third, the ability to appear completely civilized and peaceful while being absolutely relentless in pursuit of justice. She added one more note. Humans have a saying, revenge is a dish best served cold. Other species should understand that human definition of cold is measured in years. Their patience is not weakness. It is perhaps their most dangerous weapon. The news of the HAL Empire's capitulation spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species took notice. The swarms, who had been planning expansion into human-claimed space, quietly altered their route. The L Confederacy, who had been treating human traders poorly, suddenly became remarkably polite. The Merchants Guild, always sensitive to profit and risk, began offering humans preferential trade agreements. Ambassador gave a speech at the Galactic Assembly. Humanity seeks peace, he said. We want to trade, to share knowledge, to coexist peacefully with all species. We're not conquerors. We're not warriors by nature. But we are people who love our families. We are people who remember when we've been wronged. And we are patient people. He let that sink in before continuing. We hope never to repeat the unfortunate situation with the